So good evening, and good evening, everybody who has joined in on this call today. Another session of Coffee Chat. Uh, Today, I think it's going to be super interesting because I'm going to talk to Satinder, who eventually runs our own product and talks to a lot of people across the industry. So Satinder, thank you so much. For accepting this invite to come on to Coffee Chat with 5S. I'm sure that it's going to be super interesting as we sail through next 45 minutes to 1 hour, depending on how many questions do we get along the journey. Having said that, just to give you a quick and brief background about 5S, this concept of running Coffee Chat. So we started this 2021 August, and since then, it has been continuing almost every month, wherein, I bring in one guest every month and talk about certain topic or subject or agenda that we want to, discuss, focusing on technology, focusing on customer experience, focusing on certain industries, or for that matter, focusing on impact sourcing, diversity, equity, to kind of, bring that awareness amongst people across the country, at least in India, and then obviously other zones wherein people do join in from Middle East, Europe, or the US. That's why we usually keep it in the evening. It's going to be super interactive. I will have a number of questions to you, and I'm sure that it's going to be I think super fun because from our conversations that we've had so far a number of times, I'm sure that people would love to understand and know the entire story behind how did this entire concept of phone banking come into existence? What all happened?
Oh my God, that's like ages ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, how the industry has transformed today.
Yes,
So,
yes.
thank you so much. Let's get started quickly. Just to share with you, this is going to be, so while there are people joining in on Zoom, it's going to be live on LinkedIn as well. So people, will join in or see us on LinkedIn as well. So let's get started. Thank you again. A quick introduction about yourself, your background. I'm sure that people would be very keen to know more about you.
Okay, thank you so much. And just, to update the people here, this is my first live session. So I do record podcasts, which are almost live, but we don't have an audience. So I need a bit of adjustment, if at all. That's one. Second thing is that, even though I've been introduced as the internal ombudsman at, for Tata Capital, that's a very, what do you call it, a confined kind of role. So all that I speak now will be based on my experience of the last, 35 plus years, and won't have anything to do with Tata Capital per se. So I just thought I'll clarify. I'll give a introduction. It's got to do with the work that I do. So I started working in a bank in 1986. So I joined Punjab National Bank as a probationary officer. We used to have a 1-year management training program. So I was there for about 7 years till ICICI Bank was to set up a bank. And they were looking for people to, do this setup activity. And that's when I joined ICICI Bank after about 7.5, 8 years in Punjab National Bank. So the whole idea at that point of time in my mind also was that, it's banking, a continuation of banking, which it was actually not, because first of all, it was a completely computerized environment. I came from a, completely ledger-based banking where it was face-to-face. We moved to computer-based, and I was working at this Nariman Point branch for about 5 years. This need for call center actually emerged because we realized that we were moving to, a kind of centralized banking parallelly. And also, there was this whole spread of ATMs, and that's how this whole, thing about call center started. The second most important thing was credit cards as a product was being launched, by the group, and credit card only works on, it requires a call center. And that's how this whole call center thing happened. there weren't many call centers to look up to know, and we weren't getting staff who were already working with the call center. So we had to actually start from scratch, build up, various things based on our experience. And then that's how, it started. So for 4 years, we constructed and built the call center. Then I moved on to the service quality function. So I'll just, while I'm talking about the journey, I'll also talk about what of the journey really, So, and of course, if questions come between, I'm perfectly fine with that. So the thing about the call center here was that it was it was a whole game about people and process and technology, because it wasn't just that people are receiving calls and somebody is answering them. That is just one particular aspect of call center or phone banking, as we were calling it then. But fortunately, ICICI Bank by nature is far advanced in terms of technology. So many things that I see some not doing today are things that we had done in the past, like even voice recognition, we had experimented at that point of time, video calling, we had experimented. So this is as far back as, 96, sorry, this was around 2001, 2002. So it was way back then. So it was that advanced. So it was like a whole host of technology. So there was this whole people piece, the technology piece, and then putting the processes to, of course, make the two run. So that was the whole call center part. We ran, we set up a multi-channel, multi-location, and then subsequently centralized, decentralized. We put it together, and then we eventually were running virtual centers. So that was the whole call center, the phone banking piece, as we would call it. And then a learning from there was the service quality function. So, in a completely sales-oriented organization, to actually put in place a service structure. So that was the whole challenge. So where we were working with just 2 or 3 people who used to handle complaints that came once in a way, it moved to this whole thing about setting it up so that everybody is interested. Now that's like a chapter by itself, and that's the work that I do now. Realizing that this service operations is one big large piece in all organizations, particularly service-based organizations. So that's where you're putting together pieces of service delivery, as well as and then the measurement. What are the aspects that you look at? What are the standards you want to set for service quality? And the most important part is the role of senior management in driving service. I mean, that's like the key thing. And and then building a governance structure so that running happens. It won't just happen by itself, because service by nature is not something that a business person does first. It's always, though we say we are customer centric and things like that, it normally is not first in the list. There are many more things, and then that comes. So bringing that whole thing together was the second piece of the work that was done. And then after that, I moved on to core operations, corporate operations, as well as running all these various risks. So a bit of operational risk, budget management, etc. But the last stint that I did was fraud risk management and reputation risk management. So that piece, now if I really tie up the whole thing together, as far as my career is concerned, it was always to do with the customer and always to do with the employees who deal with the customer. So it was like, if you look at the thread, it was completely that. And that's what I'm really passionate about. It's always the customer and the employee who deals with the customer.
Awesome. I think this is this is an elaborative introduction, and I'm sure that there's a lot more behind what you're just talking about. One most important thing that I noticed is basically you entered into a leadership role way back in 1996, right? Which was more like setting up the things, running operations by yourself, and then kind of scaling up for years and years that you did, and you continue to do that in your consulting role today as well. From that time, when you started that early, was there a sense of acceptance, you coming in as a woman leader, trying to drive things in so-called all men world. And what kind of challenges did you face when you were trying to put certain views that were different from notional views? Because what you did was something which was not really heard of or was not done at scale, right? And then coming from somebody like you, working with the top leadership at something like ICICI Bank, right? So, and they are known to be doing it for the first time in their industry. So, how difficult was it? Was there acceptance? If not, what did you do to come to terms? And what do you see this entire journey traversing into today's time, wherein people coming from diverse background and leadership kind of becoming a mix, happening in current times?
Yeah, it's a very, actually many people have asked me that question. Even in personal one-to-one. So let me tell you, one of the things was that fortunately, ICICI then, and for all the period that I worked with the bank, there was never this distinction between whether you're a lady or whether you're whether you're a man or whether you're a woman. And so it was always the work that you wanted to do. So if I thought that I could do some work, then there was nothing stopping it, provided I was capable of doing it. So that was the sole criteria as far as this women working thing was concerned. See, there was this other bit. In fact, for many years, I used to often be the only woman in a room full of men, because most of them, by nature, it was like that. Extremely supportive management. I think it comes from there, because the moment you start distinguishing a particular work with a particular gender, that's when I think the thinking, everyone starts thinking in that manner. And I can give you an example, which is not too relevant today, but it did make. I thought it was something that could explain the whole situation. So, at our Nariman Point branch, we had a lot of lockers. So, we had set up the branch in that manner. And there was a time when we had to, move those lockers to different locations. The rules of transport, etc., in that area are that trucks, etc., can come into that area only after 9 p.m. or there was some such, the transport rules. So now what are the options that I had? One option I had was that I give request some person, some guy to do it for me. Second option was I wait there, I do the work myself, because it was moving late into the night, and that's how I could do it. But then I just thought that there's no reason logically that I should not do it, and I completed that work, and then I went home. So the point is, I think, see, I'm not looking, and I'm not covering everything, because women in as a gender, they have some difficulties, the responsibilities at home, and that's how it works. We might say a lot of things, but the reality remains what it is. But the point is that one is your own conviction about yourself. That plays a very important role. And second, of course, is the management and the teams with whom you work. And if they don't let you feel that way, then the sky is the limit.
Cool, awesome. So I think the answer actually encompasses a lot of things around the culture that you had at that point of time that allowed you to unleash yourself, and also about the fact that even today there are certain taboos that exist, but it really depends on how the entire culture has been built around. So I think this talks a lot in terms of how do you build the right set of culture when it is more on say performance or merit based rather than bureaucratic way of working. Now
there's just one more aspect I want to add here. I have also worked, in fact, when I was moving there, I have worked with bosses who were much younger to me. I mean, I want to add this aspect over there, because this is one thing which we keep, it keeps hitting, and it does come in the way of many people who are, working, that, to work with a younger boss, what does it feel? How does it feel? And here again, that same thing which I said, the moment you start thinking age when you're talking to a boss, that's when, you get all those other problems. But when you look at your boss as somebody who is capable of leading the shop, then the whole, then this doesn't come in the way. so, it's one is, of course, for people to accept a woman as a leader. Second is to accept a younger woman as a leader.
Wow, I think we still have a lot of distance to travel, particular to this aspect in India, and I'm sure that with time people would come to terms. Now coming to the phone banking era, starting from where you kind of built way back in 1996 to today, what is your view of the entire BFSI or banking industry per se, flaring up to the stage wherein CX transformation, a lot of jargons being used, but what is your view in terms of how customer service or experience was perceived then, when you thought of obviously business first and then obviously customer service or customer experience coming into picture at some point of time, and to today, how this entire evolution has happened, and what do you think has been the key change in terms of technology, people and processes, that looks like there is some transformation happening in banking industry, particular to India as a market?
Yeah. So I think the direction is the same. So if it's a path which we started walking on, or the journey that we started, that journey remains the same. So it is not that there has been a U-turn. Okay, that's the starting point. As far as evolution is concerned, definitely technology has played a very large role. So I think 2 or 3 things have played a very large role. One is technology per se, absolute technology. Second is internet, so internet and this whole online concept, that has taken, that exists today. So technology and the internet both have kind of, changed the way things happen. They have changed it very fast. So the speed of change has been very fast. So while the direction remains the same, the change of speed, it's really quick. So as a result, what I see is that, even earlier we thought that why should the routine queries be answered by an officer? Plain and simple, right? So we had an IVR. Now this IVR was a standard IVR. Then we also went about teaching the customer to use the IVR. Okay, so there was this whole customer education piece, which even exists today. You need to tell the customer what he needs to do. Of course, today it's done in a little different way. The third thing was that how do you, get more and more customers to the IVR? So the IVR needs to be user friendly. Okay, the language used has to be friendly. Now, this again remains the same because you need to talk to the customer in the language he knows, the language he understands, right? So those things continue to remain the same. The fourth thing is, is that actually this is a part, but this is what is true even today with the best and the most advanced technology. The fundamentals have remained the same. And if you really look at the human need, a customer may be having high expectations today, but he had high expectations even then. So the question is that, when you look at it, when does a person really require help? Okay, he requires help in at least twice is what I can, envisage. So one is that when he's going to buy something new, when you go to buy something new, you want to take your family, you want to take your friends, and then you want to go, and it's an occasion, right? So when you want to buy something new, so that is when, as a human brain, you're hardwired that, yeah, you need someone to help you along over there, right? The second thing is when you are in a difficulty. So when you're in a difficulty, what happens is that's when you're looking around for people. So even today, in the most advanced, like if you talk about chatbots, and that's maybe you want to come to it later, but I can, while giving an example, I can tell you many times you're asking the chatbot the same question 5 times, but it doesn't get understood. And then, eventually, okay, it ends into not a great conversation. Then you drop it and say, okay, forget, I don't want to, continue this conversation. So I think technology definitely has taken over. It results, and technology has 2 basic advantages. One is reduction of time, that it takes less time. And the second one is reduction of errors. So that's the key piece there. So, your cost comes down because the time taken for doing things comes down. And that has definitely changed along the period. But the fundamentals remain the same. No, I can't hear you.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think this is really useful. Now, I think while the fundamentals have remained same, what's more important to know at this point of time is the customer persona, right? To what it used to be earlier and to what it is now. I think that has gone through a
Yeah.
big and huge shift, right? So Gen X, Gen Z, and then millennials, and I'm like, now what not, right? So what do you think are the top three disruptions that have happened in banking and fintech as a sector today? In terms of the way this industry is envisaging products or services for its customers.
So see, if you look at the customer persona, I mean, in general, okay, so customers have become more impatient, right? So they get frustrated easily. The frustration, it's faster. Second is the customer expectations have increased. Now, why they have increased is because on a very broad basis, the the distinction between industries has reduced. So if I am dealing with the bank, or I'm dealing with Amazon, I will compare bank service with Amazon. I will compare a telecom service with somebody else, payment with someone else. So what has happened is that the lines have blurred between industries. So customer expectation is with the best. So whoever is the best, irrespective of industry, that is how it is today. The third thing is that the emotional drivers, it's like, I want something, they used to say, the customer wants everything free, perfect, and now. This is what the customer wants. So first of all, he doesn't want to pay for it. Second is he wants it perfect without any mistake, and he wants it just now. That's how the customer expectations are. Now the customer's emotional, like what drives it, the instant gratification, etc. That's again become, one thing that the customer, he just wants everything real time, right there. And the motivations to buy something, not buy something, social media has created another new world where, people want to show off what they have, the good that they have, etc. So if you look at it, that is where the customer stands. Now, how does the industry respond to those kind of, customers' requirements, so to say? So one clearly is this chatbot, as the artificial intelligence and chatbot. So, there is this whole chatbot that's taken over the servicing for the customer. So as I said earlier, of course, it will have whatever limitations that it has and the advantages that it has. But then that's one thing, that's a disruption really. Because as that gets more and more intelligent, as a bot gets intelligent, the language improves, and so that's going to be like one big change. And I think it's a disruption, though we may say it started earlier, but it's yet to pick up. And that's one thing about technology, that the speed with which it is accepted is uneven. So some companies in an industry are faster than the others. Within a company, some departments are faster than the others. So there is always an uneven pace. But that's one thing which is already changing, and it's going to change, customer service completely. Then the second is again usage of data for credit scoring and lending, etc. So that's like one big area, because lots of it has, got the decisioning is much faster. That's the other piece. And mainly because now there are identifiers. You can identify a customer by either PAN number or Aadhaar number, telephone number, etc. So that's the other piece that works. The other disruption, and when I'm not saying these are disruptions in that sense that they're going to start, or they've already, but they are on the way, is this whole thing about predictive analysis. So you exactly, and this mostly used for in sales, cross-selling and selling, etc. So, you analyze what exactly are the customer requirements and what, how you can take care of them. And the most important, and this like really, really critical, is cybersecurity. So this whole piece about, protecting the customer, protecting the company's data is, another thing that's, that really needs to develop, as well as, it's in the process of developing. So broadly, I think these are the, areas that that are disruptions, as you may call them, which will change and which are changing the way customer experience is?
Awesome. I think cybersecurity is one subject which I think would be on for, I don't know,
Yeah,
how long,
forever.
but yeah, I'm like it's gonna be there, right? Now looking at, you know, challenges from an industry per se. When we used to talk about, say, 90s, early 2000, or in fact, up till 2010, 12, 13 also, for anything and everything, we would just go to bank, right? And then you would say that, okay, things are done, and then, you know, you come back. Today, there are more than banks, at least 100 other products that are meeting or offering to meet the needs for anybody who would want to think about finance, right? So while the scope is widening like this, what do you think are the key challenges? And you have been at the helm, you have seen it, you have been resolving customer complaints, you have been you have been a customer advocate also, wherein, you know, you kind of talk to the system and even challenge the system when a customer comes to you and, you know, seek explanation or ask for a resolution. What are the top 3 challenges that you see as an industry that, you know, both business, which is more like, say, for example, the regulatory bodies or banking or financial institutions, and also the customers they face today? Because earlier I knew that, okay, I need to buy a home, I'll go to a bank and say that I need a housing loan. Okay. Today I'm like, rather than going to bank, there are about 50 different companies that are offering me similar thing, right? Now, while you can call it an evolution, I would also want to see what are the risks associated with it, correct? And while we are talking about somebody taking loan or credits, or somebody lending money or somebody borrowing money, but there is more to it, which can lead to a catastrophic failure. And we have seen a number of banking institutions going down in past decade or so. So today, when we sit on the cusp of technology, people and financing institutions coming together, what are the challenges that you see, from 30,000 feet, which you feel that needs redressal, or, those are required to be addressed with laser speed?
So there are multiple questions. So I'll just try to, separate them. So one of them is that banking was a product, if you're talking about, earlier. So, you went to the bank to do banking. Okay. Today, there are different functions and there are different entities doing those functions. So say, for example, I would have gone to the bank to take a home loan, for example. Okay. But today my product is home loan. My product is not the bank. So when I want to take a home loan today, I will look at whoever is offering me a home loan. It could be, it could be anybody. Okay. It could be a NBFC. It could be, even maybe the builders are offering loans. So, there could be anybody who's offering. So first of all, the requirement as such is become more clearer. It is not you're going to the bank or something like that. So that is one part of what you said. The second thing is that, see, there are many entities who are performing many such functions. So say the most, common one is payments. So if you look at payments today, I can, of course, eventually it goes to the bank and maybe the CBDC may change the way some things happen. But the point is that I just have a need for payment, right? So what do? I use a mobile number. Mobile number is the identifier. I'm able to make a payment. But the product that I require is payment product. I really don't care as a consumer whether it's the bank or whoever else, but the person from whom I buy is. So as far as products are concerned, role in this, your consumers' requirements are being met. That is the long and short of it. Okay. Now, you asked another question about, banks getting into trouble and all. I'm not getting into that part because that's a larger part. And why I'm saying it's a larger part is it's got to do, there are too many variables and moving parts there, because it's got to do with lending, it's got to do with borrowing, it's got to do with the economy, the way it functions. It's got to do with many changes have happened in banking in terms of, non-performing, and the definitions have changed over a period of time, and there's a lot there. So we'll just park that aside. But as far as a customer experience is concerned, if I look into that space, and majorly retail, if we look at the retail space, see, there are a few things which that we might call them challenges or opportunities, whichever way that banking on an overall basis faces. So one of them is to respond to the customer needs. So, like we were speaking, the customer's expectations, etc., have changed. Now the banking has to respond to that. Now it has to respond as in it will have to digitize itself differently. It'll have to get into the kind of, like the bank service should be equal to Amazon service, bank's refund system should be equal. That's how it will work. The second thing from a bank point of view is also the scalability thing, because what has happened now is you don't have to be physically present to do banking. So I don't have to go to my local bank. So the scale is huge. It's just like, kind of opened up. So cost optimization becomes another very key challenge for banks as to how they can serve so many customers with less cost, with, managing their cost well. Of course, the other challenge remains is cybersecurity, the whole security and compliance framework, and that space. Another important one, in fact, two important ones. One, as in terms of money, is this investment prioritization. So now when a bank has got to do so many things, it depends on what it is prioritizing, because the resources are limited. So what does it prioritize? And another key thing as far as people is concerned is the skill gaps. Now, why skill gaps? Because the changes are very fast. Today you're learning something and tomorrow it's outdated, and third, and even, I need to catch up with what are the new technology terms, what new is happening. Every time you need to keep looking at what's new. So that's one, a key thing. The second is these changes have a very high impact. So I'll give you a small example. It's like, and of course it's dramatic, but I'll still, for the sake of the example, I will tell you. So if I was writing to one customer, okay, so I would write something to one customer, even if there was an error, I would be able to manage with that customer. I would be able to talk to the customer, explain, look, this is the error, this is what happened. Today, if I have to send out a message and I'm sending an SMS, a text message, it goes to some thousands of customers. Now, the moment that message goes, it's an error which will happen to that many number of customers. So the impact of an error today, because of technology, just as, we reduce the errors because we use technology, but the impact of when something goes wrong is very large. And that's like, that's a gap. And that skill gap, why I say it's a skill gap, is because you need people to understand the implication of the action. But because the changes are happening so fast, for people to get skilled to be able to understand the implications, it takes a while. The third thing is also, again, as we said, that just as humans are, it's not even, everyone is not at the same stage, same pace of learning. So some are, at a different stage. And of course, the external uncertainties is another piece. Like COVID is a classic example, it just changed the way we were doing things. And then there'll be many, like a war or, so many such other things which are high impacting. So these things, just as they impact the banks, there are challenges for the banks in the service experience, customer experience space. The same things are challenges for the customers also. The customer has a security challenge, he has a learning challenge, his understanding, or the bank staff doesn't understand his problem. He's trying to explain, may not understand his problem. He has a problem with those automated responses. So it's the, it's on both sides, the customer side as well as the, banking sides in the customer experience space. So I think these are the broadly what I thought were, things which are more nearer to us.
No, absolutely. I think, and it's like the moment there is something new, or the moment we talk about technology, while it brings a lot of new things, new perspectives, it also brings whole lot of new set of challenges as well.
Yeah.
I think then obviously we need to obviously deal with all those challenges because, like for example, 90s, the challenge was reaching to those many customers. Today, challenge to how do we manage those customers that we have already been able to reach out to, right?
Yeah.
How do you make sure that the entire customer lifecycle journey is taken care of? So while I move on to the next part, and I'm like, time is flying like this on this chat. I would want to possibly take a few questions from
Sure.
people who have joined in. Kuldeep has asked that today in terms of technology, jobs are being eaten by technology in BFSI space at a rapid pace. What do you think is going to be future of jobs, particular to BFSI as an industry or as a set of sectors, say 2, 3, 5 years down the line?
See, it's a slightly touchy subject, but I'll still give my what I think is the explanation. So one is that in totality, whether jobs are decreasing, they could be decreasing if you look at the recruitment by the banks. Okay, so if a bank recruited, say, 100 people, today maybe it recruits 70, I don't have the figures. But what has happened is a new set of work has got created. So bank is now outsourcing its work to others. That industry is then recruiting people. I mean, if you take the entire, I think I'm not very sure at this point of time how many banks are managing their own customers. They could be to some extent, but most of the other things are outsourced. The entire collections industry, to a large extent, is outsourced. Data entry. So what is happening is that in the entire universe, the places where jobs are now available have changed. So instead of joining a bank, you might be joining an outsource service agent. And the second thing is that skilling has to keep happening. So it's not like, I mean, it's so huge. Sometimes even if I have to think back, it's so much that has changed for me, even though I started on a slower pace. It wasn't that, when things were happening so fast, sorry, when I was working. So today it's much faster. So it is faster, it is easier. So I think as jobs, people will have to keep upgrading themselves, will have to keep checking where jobs are available and how they can be done. And also the other thing is that, solopreneurs or entrepreneurs also in number, there is more scope today. Earlier, we had very limited areas where one could, work or do. But today, like content creation is one big activity that people do, which we never did earlier. Everybody wrote their own, letters and their own marketing content. So I think overall in the environment, there is work in that sense. May not be in the banks per se because of technology and various other maybe online, maybe even now remote working. That's created another fresh set of activities or skills required.
Got it.
But I'm, of course, at no point of time I have numbers, so I don't want to make a comment on that in that area.
No, absolutely, I understand that. But you actually picked a very interesting point while you were talking about this entire job and service aspects, and you incidentally spoke about collections. Now collections has become such a huge thing in this entire customer lifecycle management. And there is a question on this which talks about while it outgrows in numbers, because more the number of people borrowing, there are more and more people who are defaulting on the borrowings as well. Having said that, while there could be a few percentage of people who really have intentions to not pay, right? And we have seen in numbers also, usually retail borrowers are not really very high on cheating if you accumulate the overall numbers.
Yeah.
But still, to meet that customer's demand, and I can give an example, I won't quote the name of the bank. One of the banks, so-called in digital world, talking about collections and then talking about customer service quality, I can give you my example. I received, for instance, from this bank about 20 calls from morning 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock, and not even a single call got connected. Now, neither I know the issue, nor do I know why are they wanting to talk to me, but and because they have not been able to talk to me thoroughly through their entire conversation, they even don't know whether they can close my case or they have to keep it open. Now, in this entire process, what has happened is that I have lost faith in that particular bank, right? Because I feel that, the processes are broken, systems are broken. So, and I'm sure that you consult with a lot of, businesses in this space. So how do you envisage this entire, customer service quality to be maintained when it comes to, the entire lending cycle once the, lending has happened and it is the recovery time? So more on the collections part of things. How do you envisage?
Yes, it's even a currently running hot issue. So so I think from a organization perspective, I can tell you, from an organization perspective, just as it was in service earlier. See, collections is an extension of service, and the organizations need to think of it that way. Okay, there is no second about it. And there, even the regulator has put in guidelines on how it has to be done. So they have time of, you can only call between this time and this time. You can only, obviously, you cannot use abusive language. And there are those, various rules which have been put in place. Now, it's all about the organizations or the lenders then following those rules and regulations. So I think the regulator is very sensitive to this. I mean, that's very clear, and they take it up very strongly whenever it comes to their notice in whatever form. But as far as companies are concerned, it's clearly to do with, them changing the way, if at all they are doing things which are not as per the guidelines, then, I mean, there is no way. Somewhere it will pay. These things eventually pay off. If you're not doing good collections today, at some point of time, it is going to hit the organization. It may not hit today, but at some point of time, it will. And then it's also got to do, and this is, typical of this whole, this whole concept of continuous improvement. And I'm talking from a company's perspective, not as a consumer, as a, from the lender's perspective. There is this whole thing that they need to understand as to whether the lending has been right in the first place. I mean, are we, lending to people who we should not be lending to? Now, when I say that, it is also in terms of the repayment capacity. It has got to do with, maybe certain businesses they are not able to deal with, or they don't have a good sense of certain areas where they are not able to, really, get a good grip of the situation. Because see, it's like this: if I'm based out of Bombay and I'm like lending some other place, I will not even have an idea. And there is a lot of local flavor. And I was actually somewhere when you started off, and before we had this session, we had a brief talk on diversity. This whole thing about who are the people who are going and doing this. See, why we say diversity? The person who is going should be able to relate to the person who is, who is the borrower. That I can't be sitting in Bombay and making a call to some village somewhere and expecting that person to understand what I'm trying to say, because there is this whole, different cultures that exist. There are there's a lot of stuff that happens there. So I think this is all about the rule game. It is nothing beyond that. So if you cannot, if you are calling in the wrong timings, it's wrong. I mean, it's absolutely wrong. You're not supposed to make a call after 7 p.m. You're not supposed to. Or if you're not supposed to use abusive language, you're not supposed to. You should be telling the customer in advance. And these things that I'm talking about, I also think business, right? So I'm not saying that, businesses should stop everything and then, just follow those 8 or 10 rules, right? But there are some basic non-negotiables that should exist. So that, it's like, you ask this question, why should something fail? If you're talking about, if a bank is lending and not able to recover its dues, obviously it is getting into losses and it's not going to be able to, survive. So the bank needs to survive. At the same time, the customer needs to pay. And between that, there is a non-negotiable code of conduct that needs to be followed. I really can't think of something else.
Awesome. So I think while you spoke about diversity, we have Rita, who has joined in from Everest Group, right? And she has been an advocate on impact sourcing, diversity in customer experience management space.
Okay.
And we keep talking about this subject, and there's a question which is relating to diversity and impact sourcing. So impact sourcing is less known in India. Just to give you a perspective, United Nations has got sustainable development goals. In alignment to those goals, there are various other categories that are untouched by just diversity, equity, and inclusion that usually organizations have certain say, for example, policies for. So impact sourcing has been in practice for quite some time. India is yet to kind of know, but just to give you a perspective, impact sourcing is nothing but, say, for example, as you spoke about, somebody sitting in rural area, you kind of bring some people from rural area, upskill them and make them employable. So, and then obviously, there is that all of a sudden that empathy quotient goes up. And then obviously, there is much more of a stickiness because in today's dynamic environment of, processes, tools, technology, everything changing so quickly, it's extremely important that you have people who at least understand one part of it, which is basically one, the culture, second, the tools or processes for that matter. Now, for them to stick around, that means you're talking about lesser churn, right? You need to see if there are certain factors that make people stay. So in your entire journey of customer experience management, what do you think, particularly in the banking and financial services sector, has been the role of people or the kind of people you hire? Do you think that industry has really accepted that, one, diversity is important, two, that there is something called impact sourcing that exists and can be deployed to make things work in much more better way, while obviously reaping in benefits to the business in longer term? Or you think that the industry still hovers around, I need everything in and around Mumbai, right? So what is your take on diversity and impact sourcing in customer experience specific to BFSI domain?
See, I'm a huge proponent of diversity. Now, when I say diversity, there are 2-3 parts to this. Okay, so one is that the customers themselves are diverse. They're not one homogeneous mass. So we can't say, when we say customers, we don't mean, customers, and then we segment them into location, or we segment them into their income groups or whatever, language, etc. So there are too many cuts and, subgroups that exist in the large homogeneous mass of customers. That's one part of it. Now, a similar one has to exist at on the the banking side, or whoever is servicing those customers, right? Because unless that happens, they're not able to relate to each other. And I'll give you one very, this is it's a very old example, but it might sound a bit very drastic, but I'll tell you just to make the point. So there was this, one of the private banks opened a branch in a rural area. It was like a semi-urban kind of an area. And the corporate attire there was that you have to be suited. You have to wear a suit and you have to wear a tie. So the point was that when they opened it in that semi-urban area, and this bank staff went dressed like that, the customers weren't even coming in because they were so intimidated by looking at the staff, because someone wearing a tie and this person wearing a dressed in the Indian attire, so to say, and that's the kind of gap that exists. So if that gap exists, you'll never be able to understand. So just as your customers type is moving, your people who are handling the customers have to move. So it's not a Bombay person definitely cannot handle someone in Mizoram, or even if you take some place down south. That understanding has to be there, and that has to be created by organizations. Language considerations have to be there. Vernacular plays a very big role. I'm sure there is a certain percentage of English-speaking people. You need to have people who can speak the local languages, who can speak at least the commonly used language like Hindi, or if you're in Maharashtra, Marathi. So I think that's like a very important part, but that's one piece. I also have a view on diversity in terms of management. When I say management, it could be at any level. So, it's like if you have a team of say about 10 or 12 people and all of them are yes men types. So whatever the manager says and everyone says yes, and then they start going and doing it. But unless you have someone who comes with a different perspective, and that's another aspect of diversity that has got nothing to do with the language and culture, etc. This has got to do with the work experience that you're coming from. So are you able to give a compliance view to that? Are you able to give a risk view to what is being discussed? And that if that diversity also exists, it elevates the level of discussion. It actually brings out the best discussion. So you have someone giving an operations view, someone giving a finance view, someone giving risk, technology, whatever, and that's the best output that one can get. So diversity exists in many forms, not just recruitment and the people who are working.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's just the first step, right? So while people just talk about diversity at the time of hiring, I think it's more to do with what kind of people you have, to what kind of acceptance levels you have, plus what kind of culture you build in terms of having conversations. What kind of people would say? Is it more like one size fits all, or you kind of see that there are diversified views, opinion, required? And again, absolutely, it is easy to get people in, right? But getting diversity into the system, having them included in various processes, decision makings within the organization.
Yeah, that's important.
And giving them equal opportunities or chances to speak or participate. I think this is a long journey, and maybe hiring is just about 20, 25, 30% of the entire thing, right? But what I personally feel is that even at that level, we fail, right? So forget about the rest of the thing, right? If you don't open the funnel itself, it becomes extremely difficult for you to kind of look at various other aspects of diversity or impact sourcing. And when I talk about impact sourcing, I can give you an example, and I really get fascinated, wherein, like, for example, in US, and obviously I cannot name, there are a couple of companies wherein, they are employing incarcerated women who are, kind of, say, for example, sentenced, and then they want to start their life again. Now, when they come and service you, they come with super high level of empathy, right? Now, today, in this entire post-pandemic era, what people are looking for is human touch, okay? While all the businesses are talking about technology, all the customers are talking about human touch, right? Wherein at least let me have some human-centric view and somebody to speak to me and solve my problem. So I think that's one aspect wherein, people have started to open up. In India, I think there's a lot to be done. And I'm like, would it take further more years, or would it possibly need somebody like you talking about this in BFSI sector and say that, hey, you know what, you possibly need more human-centric approach, because technology anyways you are good at. Right now, when you are deploying human beings, what kind of human beings would fit into your requirements and help you solve your business matrices? I think that is something which is a very, very important point. And, I'm like, everyone needs to think through, and I'm sure that with various conversations that we would have post this coffee chat also, I've taken this as a charter that, need to talk a lot before we start to, see some change. And we have to be persistent enough. Right, because even in diversity, equity and inclusion, while we've been talking about it for quite some time, the real implementation, we are still far, right? So I think a lot has to be done in that aspect. The last thing before we kind of wind up, because I'm sure that while there are a number of things that are there, in terms of technology, okay, while we talk about customer experience, what do you see and where do you see? And obviously, you have been consulting to various while being an ombudsman, wherein you look at customer issues. You've also been consulting to various organizations in BFSI space as well. What kind of technologies are going to disrupt, and where do you see that the technologies can actually drive the future of customer experience? While obviously there is people element, then obviously there is a technology element, which is extremely, extremely important. Because one point that you mentioned was that as the scale comes, the banks are seeing a massive challenge in terms of optimizing costs. And that cost optimization can come with some efficiency building through people, maybe something through outsourcing, but most of it can come through technological, interventions. So where do you see technology playing a role, and what areas you think are realistically, doing really well for banks or financial institutions for that matter?
So see, if you see what technology you use is another, is one part. So that's more technical in nature. But if you ask me, there are two or three broad areas which I think we are going to drive this forward. So one of them is clearly artificial intelligence. Now, basically, okay, I put it in very, very common layman words, it's basically the use of data and intelligence to be able to give the customer what he requires. So it's really going to play a big role, because I think the infrastructure for that is quite available today, and it is not as expensive today as it was long time back. Because see, earlier there were issues around the kind of data that you were getting, and there are the legacy systems which did not have some fields, and then good old times, there weren't that kind of validation that was possible. So today validation is possible, today standardization of data is possible, and because of that, this utility of data in the right way, I think, is, you call it by any name, is what is going to be is going to help going forward for customer service, for selling and getting fresh business, for retaining customers, as well as for security and compliance, as you were talking about cyber security, for example. Is this completely data-based? So there is technology does play a role, because it'll tell you, but the question is that it is what you input. So I'll give, there are these small examples like a customer utilizing. This is not even a very big rocket science stuff, but because there's so much volume, you only need technology which can sort out this data. So it's like a customer using an ATM card 10 times during the day, and if you look at the number of ATM transactions, you'll never be able to spot it. But this the use of data the right way, I think, is what's going to take in all aspects of banking and finance, insurance, you just name the industry. I think that's what's going to take things forward. Not really the shiny objects. Like, I'm not talking about voice interface, or I'm not talking about all those, very nice to have things. But the base thing is clearly usage of data for the right things.
Makes sense. I think with this, it is time. 1 hour just flew by like that, and I'm like, I feel like haven't touched upon many points. In fact, a lot of people who have asked.
No, I'm happy to have questions. I'm okay with if you want to, spill over time. It depends on how.
No, I think in that ways, I'm like, the audience is super greedy. They would continue to ask questions, and we would continue to answer them. But in the best interest of time, and while I'll possibly talk to you separately one-on-one on certain other subjects as well, this brings us to the end of this coffee chat. A very open, candid, realistic discussion that we had, Satinder. While you have been usually on the other side of conversations, I'm glad that I could bring you on
on the other side,
on answering side, right? So rather than questioning side, right? So I think my takeaways from this conversation is basically fundamentally, the organizations need to set their priorities well, be it banking or be it other financial services, and it has to be driven by the right culture. Second thing is tools and technologies to be put to place, keeping in mind that at least the basic aspects are taken care of. Fantasized aspects, wishes, all of that can come and play their role. Diversity is a very important aspect, not just in terms of the kind of people you have, but also how you are kind of bringing diversified views within various conversations or within various decisions or discussions that you're having. In terms of job roles, banking and financial sector is anyways is possibly the that one sector which is going to continue to flourish in one way or other way, right? And there'll be a lot of products that will come in market, and it would continue to evolve. But obviously, there's a lot that both technology as well as people and their role to play. So I think that's my takeaway from this conversation. And also the fact that while businesses talk about customer experience, it's not their first priority. Businesses first, and then, they think about,
Others,
customers
yeah.
as well. So I think this has been really interesting. Closing remarks, and then we say thank you to everybody who joined in.
Yeah, thank you so much. In fact, there's so much in my mind, and I get very excited when we're talking about customer experience and, this whole aspect of dealing with customers and employees and, putting the whole thing together. So it's been, wonderful 1 hour conversation. As you said, I really didn't know how time flew, and there's so much more that I want to tell. So if I can get these questions somewhere, I can write directly to these people, to whoever is asking the questions, because I'll be happy to, not to share my perspective, and happy to, take feedback on this, and always ready for any customer related conversations.
No,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much. Yeah.
No, thank you so very much, Satinder, for taking our time and joining us for this session of Coffee Chat. I'm sure I'll share these questions with you separately as well, and see if those can be answered offline. Thank you so much, audience. As usual, you have been just amazing. You have been silent, and you have been using chat wisely. Thank you so very much for being a patient listener, and to everybody on LinkedIn Live, thank you so much for viewing. And I'm sure that you would have taken a lot of takeaways, considering the wisdom that Satinder brings to this conversation. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.